All right, so we'll just go ahead and get started because I'm really excited for today. We're here with Dr. Barbara Stroud, and I wrote lots of notes because the bio is this long, and it's amazing. Okay, Dr. Barbara Stroud is a clinical psychologist, decades long experience. The founding organizer of the California Association for Infant Mental Health. A leader in early intervention, member of the Academy of 0 to 3 Fellows, which I want to hear about that. I didn't even know that was a fellowship. Tons of awards and endorsements from everywhere on your books, on your work. I mean, there's probably like 20 of the awards and endorsements. So it's really impressive. And also is the author of How to Measure a Relationship, a practical approach to didactic interventions. And that has been changing the world kind of in the early intervention realm, right? Helping clinicians and educators.
Right.
And so
the early intervention community specifically, because it's all about, so how do you like quantify a relationship, which is what we have to do, right? We have to write goals, right? We have to measure. So how do you measure that? And that's the point of the book, is like, how do I create an IFSP goal about engagement, about co-regulation? You know, that's what the book's about.
Yeah. I'm going to get that book, and I'm really interested to see how do you quantify that, right? Because it's not a quantity, it's a quality. It's a qualitative thing.
Right. Yeah.
And then also you have another book, and it is called Intentional Living, Finding the Inner Peace to Create Successful Relationships.
Yes. That one's the Amazon bestseller. Yeah. And that one is for adults. That one, my internal narrative for that is interpersonal neurobiology for everyone, because it really stands on all the brain science that everybody else is talking about. Rick Hansen and Bruce Perry and Dan Siegel and Mona Delahook and Connie Lillis and all these people, the same neuroscience. I translated into English. No disrespect to all the great thinkers. However, I know I want everybody to access neuroscience, and I don't want you to have 3 degrees, an MD and 2 PhDs, to be able to detangle the content. And sometimes it's like that. I love my colleagues, brilliant people. And sometimes I'm like, but I had to read that chapter twice. So it's very, it's very available. It's very practical. I just had a meeting with someone this morning. There are little worksheets in there. And the feedback was, oh my God, I find this book so helpful because it's a process. It's not just a narrative. You have moments to stop and pause and do an exercise that is personal to you, because self-help books are like, here's the strategy. No, you have to create your own strategy. And that's part of what's in that book. So I get great feedback from that book. Someone read it and said, I gave it to my husband and it changed the nature of our relationship. I said, good, because that's why I wrote it. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
There you go. Yeah.
That is fantastic.
So get a copy.
Right.
IEP battle. I need to listen.
Yeah, Joe is going through it right now. I've been monitoring the situation, Joe. Yeah. And I mean, honestly, like, all of your work has just been phenomenal and much needed. It's like a void that needs to be filled. And I'm so happy that you're filling that void, really. So what did I forget? What else did I forget?
I'm passionate about equity for children, racial equity, equity for kids who are not neurotypical, equity for communities that are gender atypical, and of the LGBTQIA community. I mean, it's about justice for all, right? I mean, could we make that real? Could we take that idea of liberty and justice for all and really make that real? Not liberty and justice for some people, because that's kind of been the way our world has run. It's like, okay, these people have access and equity and opportunity, but you don't. It's like, no. And so I'm clearly, you guys are going to find out today, if you haven't already, I'm really passionate about those who are disenfranchised, unrepresented, and whose voices aren't heard for whatever reason, because all of our babies matter. All of our babies need to be a priority. Your baby, not just my baby, your baby and everybody else's baby is a priority. And we should be making the health and well-being. I don't mean their academic scores. I mean their health and well-being, their love of life and their love of self, a priority. That's it. That's health.
Oh my gosh.
Every baby is a priority. Every baby matters.
Me too. I'm here for all of this.
Why do you have to fight to get basic equity for your kids? Why is that a battle? That should be
And
a
I
given.
love the intersectional nature of what you do, because it all is all intersectional. It's not like, okay, so these babies over here and then these babies over here, because these babies over here are these babies over here. Like, there is so much intersectionality going on.
And the only reason we do, it's like, oh my God, it's like we're cutting the baby up. Oh no, King Solomon, don't cut the baby up. And some of that, and that's about our funding. That's, and that's about, we're driven by the money. Who's going to pay for this? You know what? Y'all need to pay for it. Quit passing the price tag, and like everybody's gonna pay for it. I don't care if it's education, health, if it's developmental disabilities, if it's mental health. We're all gonna pay for these babies, because guess what? If we don't pay for these babies, who's gonna pay for it? Criminal justice. I'm not being negative. I'm not being, hate speech. We gotta give these kids what they deserve in the beginning, so they can be healthy, responsible young adults and adults. We know that. We have
not traumatized
science to ignore it. And you know this. Come on. And those of you on your book club know this. Our systems traumatize our kids. I just made somebody really angry, but they do. Our systems are insensitive. They're one size fits all. Often, I'm sorry, I'm not going to throw all the systems under the bus, but many of them have a narrow structure, a tiny window to get in. I mean, even mental health. Okay, how are you broken? And then we'll help you. How about we just give everybody what they need instead of a label,
from the
a
jump,
pathology, right? Before you have to be broken before we'll fix you. And that's the whole thing about prevention and promotion. It's like, let's give everybody access. How about this? For as long as they need it. How about that? Instead of you get 10 sessions or you get 4 sessions, how about everybody gets as many sessions as they need?
And in the school system, let's just accommodate everybody, because those who don't need it won't
make use of it. And that's okay. So I have all these radical ideas but what I also know is that, come on, prevention saves money. We know this. So when you wait and wait and wait, and you let things fall through the cracks, and you let kids have huge delays, then that gap is going to cost a lot of money. It's going to cost a lot of money. But when you start at birth and you start at 6 months and you promote health from 6 months to 4 years, you got robust children who are ready to get into an academic setting. And we don't start talking to the cortex, the thinking brain, until the earlier parts of the brain, like the brainstem and the limbic system, the survival brain, the emotional brain, as I call in the book, because my book, Intentional Living, is about using English, not neuroscience, to talk about the brain, because not everybody likes to speak neurobiology, and that's okay. So, but there's all this growing that's happening in the limbic system, or the emotional part of the brain, and we clutter that time from a year to 3 years with ABCs and 1, 2, 3s, and your kid doesn't need ABCs and 1, 2, 3s right then. They don't.
Say, back up, rewind, say it again.
Your kids,
people in the back.
Your kids, for the people in the back, your kids do not need ABCs and 1, 2, 3s from 6 months to 3 years. Please stop. Please do not give your 8-month-old the cell phone with the ABC Elmo video or whatever you think is helping them learn. I know it comes from a kind place. I know you want your child to be ready for school. That is not the key to ready for school. The key for ready to school is emotional regulation. And that means understanding my emotional self. That means having capacity to organize my feelings and share with you what I need. That means you as a caregiver showing up and giving your kid what they need emotionally, because you know what? Kids don't self-soothe because they don't know how. Stop that. They don't have the neurological capacity to do it. Kids need to be co-regulated. And guess what, parents? There are days I need to be co-regulated. There are days you need to be co-regulated. We all need other people. Yes, amen. Thank you, Caroline. We all need other people to stay emotionally healthy in this nutty space we're in. It's a nutty space. Come on. We all need help. All right. See, I'll just go. I'll just preach.
Look, and I know my mom is, and she hasn't commented, but my mom is over there like, oh my gosh, yes. I mean, that's what she's always preached to me, is that your only job is to teach your child that they can trust you.
Oh yeah.
It's just trust. It's building the trust all the way up until, and she would argue that it's past 3 years old.
Yeah.
You know, my older son, I don't know if he's neurotypical or not, but we always said he was neurotypical, but
you know who's neurotypical? Nobody is.
Right. But he didn't learn his letters until he went, like, the summer before kindergarten. We realized he didn't know his letters, and we were like, oops. And my mom was like, well, that means we did our job. Because when he goes in there to school, then he'll be ready to learn. Yeah. Because he feels safe and he feels secure and he has good emotional health and all of that. I was in a group yesterday, a parenting group. I try to refrain, but I go in there. And this mom of this 20-month-old kid, she was talking about how she was in tears every day because her 20-month-old kid won't sit down and read a book with her. And she is just like, the doctors are telling her, that they need to be ready for school. And they, this child has the autism diagnosis. So now instead of focusing on building emotional health, now we're focused on fixing that child, right? So it's like, throw out the emotional health, all of that. And she's just in tears, like, my kid doesn't want to sit down and read a book. And I'm like, what? Put the book on the shelf. Like, you don't have to do that. No, don't listen to that. To get another doctor.
Get another doctor. And again, physicians in the medical field, they are great at disease detection and healing illness. They are not trained in development, and they will tell you that. Mm-hmm. They are not trained in development. So guess what? They're really not the people to get developmental knowledge from. Right. They really aren't.
And I would argue that the developmental pediatricians are just as bad, because even though that they have developmental in the front, from my experience, they have been.
Well, I'm gonna say that just like any profession, I often say, I'm a psychologist. They're wonderful psychologists. They're not so wonderful psychologists. They're amazing teachers. They're less than optimal teachers. Every profession, there are some that are fabulous, and you would send everyone to. And developmental pediatricians as well. And there are others that are like, oh my goodness. So we have to sort of individual difference, right? With professionals, just like with children.
For sure.
So I will give grace. I think everyone's doing what they know how to do. And all of us are limited by our training. I'm trained as a clinical and developmental psychologist, and I've had the gift of learning. I'm not an OT. I'm not a speech and language therapist. But I've had the gift of learning from them. Mm-hmm. What I can do, like I'm not a speech and language therapist, but I can encourage parents to talk to their kids. That's going to help advance speech. I can say that, but I'm not a speech and language therapist, but I can say that. Talk to your kids. That helps, right? Right. So, having colleagues, a variety of disciplines of colleagues who can help you stay in your lane, like know your scope of practice, but also not do harm, Yeah.
For sure. Okay. I told you we're going to go off on all of this.
Angelina asked about pediatricians. Actually, your pediatricians, if you talk to anybody who's currently in med school, they'll let you know that they get about 6 months, I think, of developmental knowledge, and I could be wrong. It's like birth to 18. It isn't birth to 5 necessarily. So your early care and education staff, your preschool teachers actually have more academic units in development than a pediatrician would.
But it's still medical model though, right? Like it's still red flags. It's still
a lot of. I don't want to throw the pediatricians under the bus because I have great respect.
We're not. No. We're not throwing anybody under the bus.
Yeah, we're just talking. And I want to say that a lot what they'll do in many offices I've noticed is give parents those developmental checklists, because again, they're there to do disease detection, right? So I think holding that, like they're there to make sure they do the immunizations and make sure you disease detection. What is on the trajectory for healthy growth from a physical perspective. So those developmental checklists are kind of a bit of a what's a red flag, because how many folks have been to a physician who says, oh, they're not talking at 2, that's not a big deal. And for those of us in early intervention, we're like, whoa, that's a huge deal. Let's get them an assessment right now, and that's something we need to help that field understand. It's a big deal. Mm-hmm. And particularly if we know gestural communication, right? That's the other thing we notice, joint attention. And it's that when kids are not engaged in gestural communication, we're like, whoa, get an assessment. That's a big deal. Yeah.
For sure. We have a OT let's see, I spent all day as an early intervention OT focusing on just these issues. Love hearing your perspective.
Resonates strongly with what I see day to day and trying to facilitate with. Yay! You know what? Thank you for what you do as an OT. I have mad respect for what OTs do. I have learned so much from OTs. My child she's 18, a sensory seeker. And I'll tell you, when I read the sensory child, what is her book? The Sensational Child. Yes, I'm looking at it on my bookshelf. I was like, oh my God, that's my
child.
Yes. Where is it? Here. Oh, Laura. Oh, sorry, folks. Yeah. Sensational Kids.
Oh, Sensational Kids.
This is Lucy J. Miller. Fabulous. Lucy J. Love you. Yay. I was like, oh my God, they're talking about my kid. Because these are kids who are sensory seekers. They're not ADHD. They're not oppositional defiant. They need sensory input. Mm-hmm. And so when we could give her what she needed, what she craved, we saw, no surprise, a decrease in frustration in what the world would call acting out behavior. But it's like, the pediatrician didn't tell me that. And I'm not, because the pediatrician didn't know. And I'm a psychologist. I didn't know.
Right.
Nobody teaches me about sensory preferences in psychology school, you know? So thank you to OT colleagues for helping me expand my knowledge.
For real. Like, I would have thought that maybe they would teach you that in psychology school.
No, ma'am.
Interesting.
Maybe some, but not.
Okay, so I have a question.
Sure.
From my notes. Okay, so I want to bring it back to the work you're doing. I reached out to Dr. Mona because we talk a lot about intersectionality in the book club, right? I talk a lot about intersectionality everywhere because everything is intersectional. My kids are Black and brown, also autistic, also all of the things, right? Mm-hmm. So everything is intersectional, especially in my world. The problem was I couldn't find that many psychologists who were Black or brown that also were talking about this new, it's not even new, but like the current brain science, the current pro neurodiversity. I don't know what you call it, but it's a problem, right? Can we talk about the lack of BIPOC representation in your field?
Oh, well, yeah. We talk about that.
How that affects the families.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lack of BIPOC representation in mental health and in health and in a lot of our education.
Everywhere.
Everywhere. And so part of that is our educational system and the pathways to advanced education. So our educational systems are defined by the colonizers, and they are very Eurocentric. It is what it is, right? So who had the power to create the educational system? That community, okay? And I'm not saying so you either succeed in that narrow band or you don't. And we already know the research around Black and brown boys in preschool, their high energy is seen as challenging behavior versus maybe they learn by moving. So kids who do not align with that dominant culture, white culture colonizer model you failed. You're unteachable versus let's change our style for teaching.
Right. They're suspending you. They're excluding
you. They're expelling you because we don't know how to teach to you. You're now flawed. And that becomes the narrative. No, people don't want to look we don't want to look at our systems. We don't want to mirror to ourselves and say, why is it that I can't teach all the children in my classroom? And teachers are very busy and you have a lot to do. However, and why isn't the system supporting you to
supporting me? Yeah.
Why aren't you getting the resources, the people, the training, the curriculum you need to teach all the children in your classroom versus the children who can sit nicely and quietly and never speak until they're spoken to and take in information auditorily and write it down and give it back to you in the way that you want it, because that's what we call education. Children who learn by moving, children who need to stand up and shake their body every 10 minutes rather than every 90 minutes, children who are auditory processors or visual processors. We don't accommodate those kids. All right. So you have that happening. Then we have a lot of research about Black and brown kids getting to college or advanced degrees and not seeing a lot of people who look like them, not seeing professors who look like them, not seeing colleagues who look like them. And when they speak about the challenge, AKA the trauma of not seeing voices that look like them, they're told maybe you shouldn't be in the system, or there's something wrong with you, or do you need to go to counseling? So there isn't validation that my walk is challenging, because not only does no one look like me, no one accepts my perspective. Right. So the pathway is narrow, and it's
and then the stereotypes of that, especially with women. I mean, now you're angry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Anytime I have an opinion that someone doesn't like, I'm an angry Black woman. That's okay. So I just tell them up front. I say, okay, you know what? I have an opinion, and you're going to think I'm an angry Black woman. However, I'm going to let you know, this is my opinion. I already know it's going to be like putting a stereotype. So let's start there. Let's start with the idea that before I share, you're going to stereotype me. So now that we're clear, I'm going to tell you what I think. Yes, girlfriend, I do that.
Just put it all out in the open. Just throw it all out there. Put it on the table.
Yeah, put it on the table. I don't have time to play. Been Black too long. I've been Black in America all my life.
Oh my gosh, I love that. I love that.
So we have that, and in my discipline, mental health. I'm noticing folks are looking in the mirror and saying, wow, how did we get here? And I'm like, yeah, let's look at how we got here. And then what do we need to do differently to create greater equity for people of color, for the BIPOC community in academia, whose voices have been silenced historically? How do we support voices that have been silenced historically? And how do we elevate new voices, because we keep hearing the same white voices in mental health. That's not because they're not good voices. It's because we haven't created pathways for BIPOC voices.
Well, it's true, because I mean, it took me, like, I'm in the field, right? I'm in the field. I'm looking, I'm always searching for folks, like, and I'm saying, where is this person? Where is this single person that I know that there's more, right? But it took me reaching out to Dr. Mona, who I knew personally, and specifically asking for these things. And then I find you. But you were there the whole time. But that pathway was not, it wasn't open to me, who was always seeking out.
Yeah, and there are a lot of great voices speaking out for the BIPOC community in mental health, in adult mental health, in adolescent mental health. And there are very few of us in infant mental health. And it's not that we're not like loud and proud. It's that the infant mental health or early intervention or early care and intervention, everyone who supports those babies, we're already a small workforce, right?
Yeah, it is.
And so if the representation of people of color is small in the larger workforce, it's even smaller in our workforce. So yeah.
So, okay, so we've gotten to that. So we get that it's cyclical, right? I mean, it's just it's a cyclical effect. I mean, it starts at the very bottom and then it goes into, so now you have less representation in the field. How does that affect families now?
Wow.
Like,
I think,
complete this cycle. Like,
well, I think so first of all, one of the challenges for families is you're wanting to ensure your children have every opportunity, because every parent wants that, right? Every parent wants the best for their child, right? And so you find yourself being told by whoever, by the school district or pediatrician or someone, go to early. So you go to this early intervention system, and you may or may not feel that system sees the complexity of your experience as a person of color, your experience as a same-sex family, your experience as being a Muslim family. You may feel that there's some level of disconnect. And so you talked about trust. The first thing is trust. I'm going to trust you with my child when you don't even see that walking through America as someone who is BIPOC, Black, Indigenous, or a person of color is traumatic for me and my child. You don't see that when I send my son out in the street, I'm terrified. I'm terrified he will die. You don't see that? Why would I entrust you with my child? Why would I send my child to kindergarten with you when you want to say we're all human? No, we're not. I mean, we're all human, but some of us are treated like animals. Let's just speak the truth. Some of us are shamed and ignored and misperceived and stereotyped and undervalued, right? So I'm not pointing the finger and saying that's your fault. And you have to admit that it's real. So if you want to play this game that I don't see color and we're all the same, then you know what? Why am I going to show up to work with you? Because that means you've minimized my experience and the challenges. That's like, saying you may, why you fight so much for your kids? They're like everybody else, aren't they? All kids are the same. All kids have equal. She's looking at me like I'm crazy. All kids have equal opportunity. Why are you screaming so loud for your kids? because people don't see your kids the way they see other kids, and they don't give them equitable opportunity. And you and I know that.
You do take pauses in here, and that's just, I know that that's uncomfortable for some people, but we just marinate
and take it in. And I kind of meant, because I'm like no holds barred, you guys. I don't have time. I'm like at the age where I'm gonna do this work till I die. I'm gonna speak racial equity till I die. I'm trying to change the world for my great grandchildren who I will never see. We have the opportunity. The crisis of the last year gives us an opportunity to make a significant change. Both of my parents grew up in a segregated America. They went to segregated schools. My family, my mother saw crosses being burned on her neighbor's lawn. Segregation is not that long ago in our country. So, and racism and bigotry, it's still here. It looks a little bit different, but it's still here. And if there's anything I can do, as long as there is a breath in my lungs, to fight against all of it, because if it's one of us are in danger, then all of us are in danger. So I will speak out for the transgender community, for the non-Christian community, for the neuroatypical community, for the Asian community, everybody who is disenfranchised, until all of us are free. None of us are free. All of us are free, or none of us are free. And if you think you're free, you're living a lie. I'm sorry if I've offended you. I was going to start with a disclaimer. I may say something people don't like, but I got to speak my truth.
Our whole book club kind of comes with a disclaimer. I mean, it is what it is. Like, everybody kind of knows, like, okay,
woo,
I'm going to brace for this.
Need my fan. Getting hot. Who said she has chills? Girl, I got tears in my eyes. She got chills. I got tears in my eyes. This is too important. Our children, your children are too important. My children are too important. It's too important to play games. Come on, you guys.
Well, and it's funny that you, like, the segregation piece, right? That is so intersectional. To me, when I hear segregation, I think about, well, it's not over. Segregation is not over, because my children are still segregated from their peers, right?
Yes.
That's why it is so intersectional. Like, my kid is being pushed out as before kindergarten, right? Like, nope, we can't have him in this classroom because he needs more support than that, or he won't be able to do this. I mean, whatever the excuses of the day, right? He is being segregated now, and I still have to use the segregation policies from Black people being segregated to help my kid be not segregated or assimilated. Yes.
To get your kid in the classroom with all the other kids, right?
I'm not saying it right, but
I'm following you, though, babe. I'm following you.
But it is all connected. It is really all connected. And the thing is that even though Black children are now integrated, right? They're not truly integrated, because they were forced to they were forced to come in. They were forced to accept them into the school system. So the school system didn't change at all. They just said, okay, now you have to have these kids. And it's the same thing for disabled kids. Like, okay, now you have to have these kids in here. But
we're not going to do anything to accommodate you, right? We're not going to change our system to accommodate you. It's just, we're going to let you in the door.
Now you can just come.
Right. You can just come.
Act the way we act.
Right.
Right. That's okay.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I think when we look at like outcomes and data, and we ask this question, I mean, early intervention, particularly in California, we've had families of color, Black and brown families particularly, do not stay in early intervention. They tend to drop out.
Why is that?
Well, it might be because they don't find people who look like them in the system, and they don't find people who understand their caregiving practices. So I don't know if that's happening in other states. So that's something we're working on, is creating more cultural attunement, humility, sensitivity, whatever is the buzzword of the day for understanding cultural differences in our early intervention systems. But I think this is what happens. We create, the inclusion is, okay, you can come, but we won't change the way we do business. And then if you feel uncomfortable and you vote with your feet by exiting, that's not our fault because you chose to leave, right?
Right.
So we're not going to be different.
We're not going to kick you out, but
we're not going to kick you out, but we're not going to do anything. We're going to keep our standard, our colonizer standard, because we talked about decolonizing systems, right?
Can we back up for a second, though?
Sure.
For anybody that doesn't know what early intervention is here in the U.S., can you tell them how early intervention was started, what it is?
Yeah. So when we talk about early intervention in the United States, we're talking about the opportunity for the birth to three children, birth to three who have some kind of developmental delay. There's evidence that there's a delay in physical, social, emotional, language delay, to get additional services, supports, to get additional developmental services, speech and language services, OT services, physical therapy services, to mitigate that delay, to kind of be on par. And the intention is that we would support this vulnerable population of children birth to three who are showing some sort of delay or challenge. And it might be a chromosomal, syndrome, to support them to be prepared by 4 or 5 for kindergarten, preschool, that kind of thing, so that they're kind of ready to move into mainstream learning. That was the original intention. Your mother, Barbara, might know more than I do in terms of that part H to part C and on, all that. I don't need to talk all the codes. So that was the intention. However, part of the reality of the intervention or the strategy is that it's an open door. Anyone should be able to walk in and should be able to get an assessment. However, there does appear to be some gatekeeping, and depending on where you are in the United States, some systems will say you need a doctor's note, and other systems will say you have to be two to. And so that was not the intention or the letter of the law. And some will say you're not delayed enough. So, like most things, it could be
it has
better.
issues, right?
It has issues.
So for early intervention, this is kind of a different thing than going to the doctor, because the early intervention is something that you can get at home, at least in Virginia. Is that
early intervention is right? Early intervention is often a home-based service, and in fact, it's recommended to be a home-based service. Mm-hmm. It should not be. The primary goal is not a clinic-based service. So the idea is that we are moving into families' homes. We're supporting routines and rituals and cultural activities that are natural to the family system, and we're integrating our interventions or strategies within what is already happening in the family system. That's the intention of the model. It's not a mental health model. You don't require a diagnosis. You require a delay. So you don't need a formal diagnosis to be an early intervention. And in the United States, it's kind of wonky for folks who aren't in the US. Different states manage their systems. So some states have put early intervention under the educational system. Others have put it under health or the medical system. Some have put it under the developmental disabilities or communities for folks with delay. So it just depends on the state. But it is primarily a prevention model to create, I don't want to say parity because that's the wrong word, but to prepare children, to mitigate the delay, to make sure everybody's ready to learn is sort of the first step. Yeah.
Right. Well, when my older son was a baby, we had, the well baby checkups. And of course, my mom is like Mrs. Early Intervention. So she noticed that there was an issue, and he had like a neck thing going on. Like he always looked to the left. So that was something I didn't even notice. She noticed. She was like, Megan, he's always looking to the left. There's an issue. You need, go to the doctor, see if the doctor sees anything. And then, so we got services in home, physical therapy, because he had torticollis.
Yeah.
I think that's what it was called.
Torticollis, yeah.
Something about the neck or the spine. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, so like it can be anything from a physical thing,
Yeah.
anything. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you have somebody coming in.
Yeah.
And so those people are supposed to be respectful of / supportive of the home culture.
Yeah. The idea of early intervention was not, from my understanding, was never, let's take our clinical model and impose it on families in their home. That was never the intention. The intention was to support families in their natural environment and integrate the intervention into whatever is happening in the family system.
So what is actually happening? Because let's just put it out on the table, right? Because the title of this was, we want to decolonize intervention service delivery. What are you seeing that's not happening?
Well,
and we're not throwing early intervention
or anybody. Yeah, let's make that say we're not mad at anybody. We're not here to shame people. We're here to kind of name what we see and say we can do better, because I think we can do better. And there's variability, just like in our children. There are programs that are very adaptive and doing great things, and there's some that are still doing center-based work for whatever reason that they're doing center-based work, and that's interesting. Anyway. So particularly now that we've been doing virtual work, that really challenges our idea that I can only work in the center. So if you think you can only work in the center where your tools and swings and whatever you have are, it's very interesting that somehow you've been managing to work on Zoom for the last 12 or however many months. It's 100% about money. I hear you. Hold
on, let me see. Oh gosh,
so
comments. Let's see.
So what was the question? Decolonizing. Okay, so when we think about yeah, I'm with you. It's 100% about the money. People are chasing the money.
In Southern California, I struggle constantly to get services for many children and families to remain in the home environment and not be sent to a sometimes inappropriate clinical environment due to a push for insurance coverage. Isn't that interesting?
That is interesting. I'm with you. The model is home based. I'm with you, and there's so much going on with reimbursement, and we're trying to get. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm in California. Our early intervention system has pushed some of the reimbursement to insurance companies, so they're trying to get insurance to pay so that they don't have to pay. I mean, it's a whole mess. I don't want to go to, but let me talk about decolonizing. Okay, so if we think about let's think about the term colonization first of all, so we can kind of know where I'm coming from with that. It's the whole idea of stepping into someone else's space and basically taking it over, right? So he's sort of
the colonizer, right?
The colonizer pretty much steals someone else's property and land and resources. That's what that is.
And then force those people to act and assimilate. Basically.
Yeah, to assimilate, or we're going to kill you for the most part, which is often what has happened. And this is a story of many African nations, South American nations, in the Americas. It's interesting that it's often the European communities imposing their will on brown people. So that, go do some look in history. That's kind of the story, is that we have used all our resources, so we're going to come steal yours because we can, right? So, and this model, when I think about decolonizing systems, I think about the fact that our models stand on the colonizer's worldview. It stands on the view that I know better than you. I mean, and I love home visiting. I think I didn't know how to do anything but home visiting when I started my training, because that's the way I was trained. So, but when we walk into families' homes, what's the first thing we do is we tell them how to behave. We have a curriculum. We walk in with a curriculum, because we have come to tell you how to raise your child. What makes you think you know how to raise my child? Let's start there. How about you come in and say, why don't you tell me about your child? Why don't you tell me about your child? Why don't you tell me about what you love about your child, what your hopes and dreams for your child are? Why don't you tell me what your child loves to do? Why don't you tell me what your child refuses to do and pushes against? Why don't we give the parent authority over their child? Why don't we start there? I'm not minimizing your expertise. You have knowledge, but so does the parent. So the first thing we tend to do is walk in as if the parent is somehow flawed, like they don't understand their own kid. And I think that's our first mistake, because that's a colonizer's model. I know better than you. I know better than you because I have letters after my name or I have education. Well, yes, you know a lot about occupational therapy. Give it up to the OTs. You know a lot about physical therapy. I don't know anything about physical therapy. I know a lot about emotional development. However, you know your child, you know the rhythm of their flow, of their energy, of what they love. You know the family culture that you must instill in your child for their own safety and success, right? You know the heart that you share for this child. How am I going to minimize any of that? And I've been saying for years, I'm going to take my science, your culture, bring them together. That's best practice. EBPs, love them. They mean nothing if I don't connect with the family, I don't empower them, and I don't and I don't bring their culture into the story. Sorry, I don't care how much research you have. Your research means nothing if you don't make a connection with the families. And the minute you dismiss or deny the family's knowledge, value, culture, expertise about their child, you've cut off your nose to spite your face. What? What? I don't want you in my home. Are you kidding me?
And it's often that these service people are coming in our area. I don't know if this is true in other areas. Is early intervention strictly for low income kids?
No, it's any age.
It's not.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I know in our area.
I mean, it's any income. There's no income requirement. However, some folks, I mean, if you can go hire a private, speech and language pathologist or physical therapist if you want. And so sometimes it can run across economic lines. It doesn't have to. Early intervention is accessible to all. And let me be clear, because these ideas that I'm sharing, my thoughts, and I think that the best practice is working with people, is working with families, is honoring what they bring. They bring a lot, and our systems have sort of conditioned us to believe we know so much. The first thing I had to do when I finished my degree is let families teach me what I didn't know, because my degree taught me, psychology school teaches you, oh, you know so much, you're so brilliant, you have all the answers. Research is like it's like infallible. We have these studies, so somehow we know better than the person who raised this child in their belly. So families were wonderful at teaching me to not let my own degree and academic knowledge go to my head, because university teaches you that you know better than families. At least that's what my university taught me, and that was many years ago. So maybe universities are doing better. We are not taught to partner with families as a profession. We are taught to go tell parents what to do, because we are the experts. That's part of our academic culture. And we value degrees in the United States. We value the written word, and we don't value historical knowledge, family narrative, ancestral lineage, and ancestral stories. And if we're really going to come together, we got to start honoring things that are not just in writing. Because there's a lot happening for families that isn't in the literature, and we got to start listening.
And it's funny that you say that, because I know, just as a parent, right? As soon as my kid received an autism diagnosis, it was as if everything, like my mom gut, like what you're talking about, like I know my kid, we're doing this for my kid. I'm protecting him from, trauma. I'm trying to heal his NICU trauma. Like I'm protecting him, right? That's me. That's what we've been doing for 3 years. And as soon as we got this autism diagnosis, it was as if the entire goal changed. It went from what I knew to be best, right? To, oh no, we're not doing that anymore. We have to do this now. Now, this is what you're going to do. Even though I knew that wasn't right. In my head, I knew my kid. And what you're telling me, I mean, even I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. We have to do these disclaimers. We should just have disclaimers up here.
Yeah.
Even the speech therapist was telling me things like, oh, he's moving your arm because he thinks you're a robot. He doesn't see you as a human. And I knew that this was wrong, but it is that control. The experts have all of this control, right? They're given this.
Yeah.
Like, I know I'm smart, right?
You are smart.
I know that I'm educated. I know my shit, right? I know it. But as soon as we got this diagnosis and they started telling me all of these other things, because I didn't know autism, I lost all faith in myself.
We got to breathe, because and I think as professionals, to any professionals who are out there, the gift, you know a lot. I know a lot. I've been trained in a lot of stuff. And I say this to parents. I say, but you know what I wasn't trained in? Your kid. Do you know what wasn't in the evidence-based protocol I read? Your kid. So, I want to become knowledgeable about your kid. If we could, someone said, let's teach humility in academic settings. Yeah. If we as professionals could say to families, I want to learn with you. I know a lot. I have degrees, never minimizing what you know. Yeah, you know a lot. And you say to family, you know a lot. So let's share. This is a sharing. This is a coming together. This is a sharing, what I know and what you know. And here's what you have permission to say. You have permission to say no. You have permission to say, I'm not comfortable doing that with my child. You have permission to say, that doesn't feel right in my gut. And I, as the professional, it's my job to find another strategy. You're not the professional. You're the parent. But I'm the one who needs to find a strategy that you feel comfortable with. Not you. That's I should have enough training and expertise to do that. That would be my hope.
Mine too.
Yeah.
We also didn't find out about regional center services until our kid had aged out. Yikes.
Our pediatrician
did not even know that there was an age limit when they referred us. Yeah. And then they had no idea where else to send us to get an evaluation. Also in SoCal.
Yeah, regional center is a California thing. Right now. Part C/early intervention is landed in a regional center system, which is unique only to California, you guys. The rest of the country doesn't have regional centers. But yes, some pediatricians don't know this. And sadly, I've heard parents say, I called for an assessment and they told me to call back when my child's 3. I've heard parents were told, oh, yes.
They just work that day or something? Like what is that about?
I'm just going to tell you what I heard. I'm not
right.
Okay, well, you have a legal right, and no one can tell you that you can't bring your child in for an assessment. So let's, and now let's sort of,
move on from here, see where we can go.
Here we are now. So we'll,
All right. I'm loving all these comments. Stacy had a great one. I tell parents that I have a toolbox with tools, tips, and strategies that may help them.
There you go. Yeah. And they can, they can find the tool or the strategy that works for them, and they can throw out the one that doesn't. You have power and authority. It's your child. Yeah.
It's extra bad because regional will only do services after 3 if it's a lifelong disability.
Yeah. So the regional center holds that Part C prevention piece, and then it moves into developmental disability. So if you need services after 3, you must qualify for a disabling condition in the state of California.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think after 3, in Virginia, I think it's just public school, and then you have then it moves on to other things.
Some other system, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's see. Are any of your books available in audio?
Right now my books are not audiobooks. I'm sorry. Someone else asked me that. Oh.
Would you like me to narrate them for you?
Yeah, go right ahead. I'd love that. But I do the Intentional Living is a Kindle book. That one's on Kindle. The other book, How to Measure, is not a Kindle book.
And are they both in Spanish now? I saw that.
No, just the How to Measure a Relationship is in Spanish.
That is a great one to have in Spanish.
Yeah, and that was some of our colleagues in South America wanted that in Spanish. So I didn't do it. I got a colleague to do
That's
the translation
great.
For me. Yeah,
that's so important because I know that even in Texas, there's huge Spanish populations everywhere, but especially in Texas, I talked with one of the pediatricians down there, and she was like, "There's just not enough pro neurodiversity." Not deficit-based content for for her to even share with her families, educators, to partner with them. So that's really important. Caroline said, if these things had been told to me, my child would have never received ABA. I knew it felt wrong. And that's the thing, like, things that you know, things that you know aren't best practices. Like, I know best practices. Like, I lived and breathed them growing up. 40 hours a week of anything is not best practices when you're talking about infant and toddler, and I mean, early childhood, period. It's just, but you know that you don't know, you don't know what you don't know. So it's like, then you trust these professionals to tell you, but then you lose, we need to trust in ourselves as well as.
We need to trust in ourselves. And I think sorry, dear, one thing that happens when intersectionality, and I can't.
What do you want to do?
Yeah, a comment. Where did it go now?
This one?
The one about intersectionality, just below that.
Oh, I didn't see that yet.
There we go. Interesting thing about all the reasons this happens, I figured our family, it was the intersection of race, class, gender, and ability. And I think when we get into intersectionality, these ideas of race and class and gender, there are those of us who are marginalized because we're women, or marginalized because we're people of color, or marginalized because we're poor. We go unheard. And so we get used to not using our voice. So even though we know in our gut it's wrong, we have a history of when we use our voice being, oh, don't be so, you're overreacting, mom, or you just get dismissed for whatever reason. We know best. So sometimes we don't use our voice because we've been used to being shushed. And that's when I think you got to be sadly, I got to be the angry Black woman, even though I'm trying to be the empowered Black woman. I'm going to be seen as the angry Black woman. That's when we have to be the dysregulated parent, or the complaining parent, or whatever negative lens they want to give us for standing up for our child. And I'm sorry that we have to be labeled as pathological or disgruntled to stand up for our child's rights. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
all of that.
And I think you had because you sent me some questions.
I was going back to the questions, but
yeah, what should Black and brown families keep in mind when navigating?
That's what I was going to go to.
I was going to say, keep in mind the system wasn't designed for you. Sorry.
Let me tell them what the question was. Okay. Yeah. What should Black and brown families, as well as any other marginalized families, right?
Yeah.
Poor families.
What
should they keep in mind as they navigate services, whether it's early intervention, in the school system, anywhere? What should they keep in mind?
That the system was not designed for you. Sorry. It was not. It was designed for dominant culture, which is white, Christian, heterosexual, neurotypical, monolingual English. That being said, it does not mean that the professional should not have enough knowledge and education to adapt their skill set to meet your needs. Because most of the psychology literature stands on work with Caucasian people. There's much more literature now with diverse communities, Native American, Latinx, on and on, but most of it began with the Caucasian population. And behaviors that were typical for people of color were pathologized. Mm-hmm. Our queer community was pathologized in the 50s and criminalized. I mean, so we have a long way to go. We don't even talk about how we treated the disabled population 50 years ago, because that's criminal. We won't even talk about that. So we have to understand that a lot of the science that we're standing on didn't involve people who looked like me. Right? So you have to go in, I think you have to go in, sadly, I have to do this all the time. I have to go in and educate people about how I see the world, how my health and mental health are compromised by living in a racist America, how trauma is present every day when I open a newspaper or look at the news. See, I have to educate, sadly, I have to educate people about that, because they don't walk in that world. And that's a privilege. It's a privilege to walk in a world where we're all human and race doesn't matter. You can walk in that world. I cannot. And that's also other groups. Yeah.
I was watching another podcast the other day that actually was kind of the same thing as this one. And they were talking about culturally informed practices. And it was a Black father that was up there. I think he was an advocate. I'm not even sure what he did, but he was talking to other Black fathers, right, about being in these systems, going to these meetings, keeping in their feelings, right? Because, you know, he knows, you know, our job is to protect, our job is to, you know, and then we have these, I mean, white people. I mean, most of the time, you know, you have this majority people sitting around this table. And he talked about how it shouldn't be on us, right? It should not be on us to learn all this lingo, right? It shouldn't be put on us to learn all of the acronyms and to learn about IDEA. But they will take advantage.
Oh, yeah.
If you don't know.
They sure will.
And so when you do go into the meeting, whether it's a care coordination meeting or whether it's an IEP meeting or whatever, lay it out on the table. Like, we're not going to use acronyms today.
Yes. Yeah.
We're not going to use any acronyms. We're going to spell it all out. And I did not have the same training as you. So if you use the whatever big words, then I'm going to need you to spell out what that means. And we're going to take our time on this. And you're not going to railroad me. It's basically what he was saying. Like, you can recognize, like you said, recognize it wasn't built for you.
It wasn't built for you.
But you don't have to go in there and assimilate. No. You can go in there and be your authentic self. I don't know.
And hold
what you said.
Yeah, and you hold the system accountable, because if you only scheduled an hour for this meeting, that's your fault, not mine, because we're going to go as long as it needs to go. There's no time limit on an IEP. And I hope everybody listening knows you are not required to sign an IEP in the meeting.
And to know your rights.
Yeah, I have to know your rights. I encourage parents to take at least 24 hours before you sign an IEP. But that you do what you want. You are not required to sign it at that time. You know, and you can refuse to sign it if you don't agree with what it says. So that should be a contract for your child, not a contract for the school.
For sure. I encourage my moms to consider the Tiger or other parent advocacy program to learn and stand up for their child's and family's needs and not get railroaded into decisions not best for them. And it should not be on the marginalized person's back, right? It shouldn't. We should not have to. Those people should not have to carry that weight. But the system was designed for that. So arm yourselves with, you know, with the knowledge or with other people that are more knowledgeable. Take a friend.
Bring an advocate. There's no reason you cannot bring someone else into the meeting with you. You have that right. And the advocate can be anybody you trust. It can be an educator that's a family member, and there is your advocate, not as an educational representative to the school.
Yeah, you can bring anybody you want to bring in there.
Yeah, you can bring a faith community leader if you want. You can bring anybody that helps you feel safe enough to say, I'm not okay with that. Can you say that again? Or I'm sorry, what was that intervention you were describing? You might need someone to speak up for you because you're overwhelmed. I'm not saying you're not smart, but these meetings can become very overwhelming and very intimidating. You're absolutely right. And then all the professionals, meaning, and you can be a professional in your field too, but all the educators are speaking education babble, and you're like, what's that? What's least restrictive? What does that mean? And what is all that, you know? And they have all this language that only they understand.
And then they use things like gaslight.
You can bring your mom.
Oh, you know I do. Barb comes in. Barb is in the house whenever we have. Barb is up in there, and she's like, "Wait a minute. Barb doesn't mind.
Yeah,
she's too old for this. Like, we don't have time for all that." I'll send you the link, Angelina. It was on Facebook. It wasn't like a podcast. It was like an interview like this. It was really great. It was really great. This conversation has been so encouraging. My kiddo hasn't started school yet, but we've had opportunities to practice advocating for him with his current therapist, and it's scary. I sweat like crazy, but it's also been important. Well, you can put like some maxi pads in here, like under your jacket.
And it's I agree with you. You shouldn't have to fight for your kid, but you do. And get ready. I know parents are like, I didn't sign up to be an advocate. I didn't sign up to be an expert on school, the legalese about and sadly others aren't going to give you that information. You're gonna have to fight for it. And you have this great book club, and I'm sure other communities that will support you and be behind you saying, you got this, go. Yes, because your child deserves the best.
Joe, I can't with you. I just cannot. They muted my advocate. It must be virtual because they didn't like her speaking for me. That has to be illegal.
It's got to be illegal. That's when you end the meeting, Joe. I mean, I don't, but that's unacceptable. How dare they? And the other thing too is now I'm in California, but I'm sure it's true everywhere. You can record these meetings. I always record the meetings.
Yeah, in Virginia, you have to give them 24 hours notice.
Yeah, you have to give them 24 hours.
Do it or whatever. But you need to record these.
So you have a copy of everything that's said in the meeting because some wild stuff can be said.
And you can hold them accountable for what they say. For sure. And Joe, I need to come to your meetings. I really do. I don't know all of the things. And that's the other thing about, like, when we talk about bringing an advocate, advocates are expensive. Like, real advocates that are trained, some of them do sliding fee scales, but it's not always accessible to say, okay, I'm going to pay this advocate $300 to come. You don't need that type of advocate. Some of us do, right? But for the most part, if you have somebody who's neutral there, who is just can see the I'm gonna cuss, the bullshit they're trying to
perpetrate, totally.
Like somebody that can just see through that, because you're there emotional, you're there for your kid, you got all these emotions and it's hard, and you don't want to see anybody. You don't even want to believe that they don't like your kid or they don't want your kid there, right? Like, your brain doesn't even process that anybody would not want a kid in their school. But somebody that's beside you to say, you're not going to do that.
Yeah.
That's not right. No, wait, pause. We're not, like, just somebody to call them on that.
Yeah.
Is sometimes all they really need to say, okay, well, we can't try it today.
And here's the other thing too with advocates and being informed. This cuts across financial lines and sometimes race equity lines. It's like, who has the funds for an advocate? Who even gets an IEP? Getting an IEP. I've heard parents say, I asked for an IEP and they told me they'd get back to me. They never got back to me. It's been 3 months. And it's like, okay, did you put it in writing? Did you get a receipt when you turned it in? Was it time stamped? Have a copy time stamped that you take with you that they receive. I mean, it's just, there's all this you have to do to chase to make sure that people got the request, that you have evidence that they got the request, that they're going to follow through with the request. So some folks, and here's what happens, is the families that we don't think are going to sue us are the ones that we try this nonsense with, are the ones that we say, oh, our school doesn't do IEPs. You have to be at that school. I mean, this is the nonsense that families hear. And some of them don't know the law. And so sadly, and that's a few,
Too much. Too much. Yeah. Oh no, we have lots of comments.
Yeah.
Your interventionist should work for you and your needs. That is
absolutely
so important. You're the boss.
Seriously, no matter what. Yes.
You are the boss.
You are the advocate. Fearly, no apology. How dare they sound? This is your child. No, nobody. Talk about that mama bear. She's coming. That mama bear is about to show up and show out. This is my baby. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. You have some sort of due process. I don't even know what that means, but you can, yeah. Joe,
Yeah.
come on now. It's a whole thing. Don't brand twist. They do kind of like to walk that line. They do. They test it. It's also scary because if you become that parent, they can take it out on your, okay, there's another one.
That's, you know what, and that is so sad and so true. And so that's the scary line, Kimberly. I'm with you, because you don't know what's happening in that classroom when you're not there. And you don't want to be the parent who then your child gets, a bad deal because of something you argued for them, which you had a right to argue for them. Yeah, it's a fine line. It's a fine line.
That's a huge point, Kimberly.
So you had also, we had sort of said how service providers can be more conscious of their practices and their process in this. And I do, one of the things that I've been doing for forever, really, but doing more now, is race equity, implicit bias kind of work, and where are we as providers in this work, and reminding provider communities that there isn't equity, first of all. So we do have to speak to our communities of color and our disenfranchised communities, for whatever reason that they are disenfranchised, about their unique experience as different. We can't use the same, brush for all of our families. And we have to start asking, tell me your story about any discrimination you may have had from my system, from mental health, from education. I mean, we, as professionals, we have to start asking that question, I tell providers, because families, when we walk in, we set the agenda. Like I'm the psychologist, I'm the speech therapist, I'm the developmental specialist. We tell people what we're here to do, right? They don't know. It's not their job to know what our expertise is. And everything is influenced by race and equity. And equity means ability status. Like we said, it means faith equity. What's it like? I talk about this a lot. What's it like to have a non-Christian faith? And there are a lot of them in which your card, Hallmark doesn't make a card for that. It's like, it's great that there's a whole aisle of Easter baskets, but I celebrate something that there's not a Ramadan card, hello. So what's it like to be that kid that your holiday and your faith community is invisible? What's that like? And I'm not saying you have to be an expert on every religion, but let's ask. Let's ask. And what's it like?
And what is affecting you right now?
Yeah. And how's it affecting you and your kiddo? Just, and asking is, and sort of, and then, because here's the other thing, because, well, mental health professionals, I don't know, I'm going to say mental health, sure, like, we like to fix stuff. First of all, you can't fix stuff. There's stuff you can't fix. You're not going to fix racism, but you can be sensitive to someone's story. And really, the best intervention is to listen to someone's story and say, I hear you. You don't have to say that's hard. Don't feel sorry for people. People don't need you to feel sorry for them. Say that, I hear you.
Yeah.
Say, I hear you. Really listen. Don't listen with this idea that I have a strategy, I'm going to fix it. You're not going to fix it, because it's theirs to fix. I hear you. And then say, is there more you want to tell me? Like, invite for more. And then say, how can I help if I can? Because they stop telling people what they need. This is one of my big things for providers. Stop telling people what they need as if you know.
That reminds me of Dr. Mona's book. Like, she was like, just ask, how can I help you?
That's
like,
Dr.
How are you feeling? Right. How are you feeling? It actually translates to adults as well. Like, how are you feeling about that?
Like with our kiddos when they're dysregulated, I'm here for you. We'll get through this together. Yeah. It's okay. You're not going to talk them out of being dysregulated. It's going to take time, and their own nervous system has to slow down, and you can be there with them as they move through that challenge. And when they calm, I'm here. I love you.
And you have you have a training, right? You have a training that you do train providers in this type of.
I have trainings for a lot of stuff.
Well, yeah. I mean, you do consulting work as well as, you do all of the things, but if a provider or if a system or whatever organization wanted to do better at this, to understand what this means, to do better for their community that they're serving, you have that available to them. Isn't that right?
Yeah. I have implicit bias trainings. I have cultural awareness, cultural humility, kind of repellent cultural humility trainings. I have reflective practice, which may or may not be a term that everybody here knows, but it's about being in a relationship that involves understanding where you're coming from, reflecting on your experience, and then imagining the mind of the other in a very quick way to sort of put that whole framework together. And if you want to follow me on plug for my YouTube, well, I have a YouTube channel too, but my Facebook page is Barbara Stroud Training.
That is in the links in case anybody's wondering. Yes, it is.
And in the next couple of months, I'm going to be launching some trainings that you can sign up for on Eventbrite. And the first one is going to be on my first book, How to Measure a Relationship, which is going to be more for providers, because it's going to walk them through how to use the book. And then in September, the end of September, I'm going to do a training on intentional living. So that's the relationship book, which I would really encourage parents to attend if you want, or anybody on your
For sure.
on this, because it's all about that relational world, our relational world, what internal narratives we hold about who we are in the world because of our own experience, and how that plays out in other relationships. These are relationships with your kids, with intimate partners, with your boss. I mean, it's like we are relational beings. And here's the thing about relationships: nobody really teaches you how to be in them. and nobody coaches you when you're not doing them well. So yeah. Yeah. And this book, Intentional Living, it's a primer for psychotherapy. It's not a replacement for psychotherapy, but a lot of people have read it and sort of have said this very same thing. I've learned so much about myself and my process simply by reading this book. And it's all interpersonal neurobiology. It's what our brain tells us. And to some degree, that's by what our parents tell us and what the world tells us. Because what does the world tell us about neural atypical kids? That they're the problem. And I have spent enough time with families and children that are not neurotypical, and I'm kind of like, I really do. I said this. We're all none of us are neurotypical. Some of us just are a little bit more. we just stand out a little bit more in terms of not being typical. But we all, we all kind of, our brains don't quite do everything in the same way.
Identical, right? Exactly.
We're not all identical. Yeah.
Well, I'm excited for the training. So I want you to keep us informed, and then when they go live, we'll put them up in the book club and put them up everywhere.
Yeah, I'll make sure I send you the links for when they're about to go live, and I'll be putting them on my Facebook page in terms of announcing when they go live. And what I'll probably do is, if things fill up, I'll repeat them, and so people can still get in a couple months later. And if we'll see if folks have topics they want me to do, then I'll put up a training. And we'll do that.
That's awesome. I can't wait for the training. I've been doing Dr. Mona's training that she just did, and that's great. And I'm waiting for yours to go live now. I'll be messaging you like, is it ready? Is it ready? Not yet?
Is it up yet?
Is there any other questions? I know I'm skipping comments, and I haven't. Oh, okay. Thank you for coming. Yes. Thank you for coming. I'm glad you were here, Stacy. I think Stacy's new to the group.
Oh, thank you, Stacy.
Pulling up
public school. Yeah. Okay. You know what? I hear you. The kids are verbal, but the teacher was scary enough. Yeah. To keep the kids quiet. Yeah. And I'm glad you could do that. I'm glad you were able to homeschool them. That to me is criminal. I have had experiences where I have heard from parents, and I've seen myself, children being emotionally abused by the educational system, and that breaks my heart. Because if I was emotionally abusing my child, you would call Child Protective Services, and yet we allow, or some of us allow, teachers to be abusive, and that is never okay. That is never okay. Yeah. Thank you so much for what you're doing and for joining us. Thank you for what you're doing, Barbara. I understand you are a leader in your state in early.
Yes. Well, she's at home now. She's just being grandma now. She's Nana now.
Nana is a very important job, let me tell you.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Full time for her too. Has got all these kids.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to say? We have all the links up for you.
Yeah.
and we will continue to share them and hear from you. Is there anything
Definitely.
else you want to talk about?
I just want to say thank you for this opportunity. It's been a gift. I've had a wonderful time chatting with all of you. And for the parents out there, don't let anybody silence you. Okay? Don't let them silence you. Your voice is your greatest tool. Use it.
I love that.
My final thought.
On that note. Oh, the question. Yes. Oh gosh. Okay. Thank you, Angelina. I do have a final question. And you kind of did say it, but we're going to do it again because I make a clip on YouTube for this. If you could give one piece of advice to the parents of newly diagnosed autistic children, what would it be?
I would say take a deep breath. Know that the diagnosis doesn't change the wonderful, beautiful child that you already knew you had. Okay? That child is there. That beautiful, wonderful child that you have loved since inception is still there. All right? And immediately connect with a resource of other parents, because no one knows the walk of a parent of a child who has a disabling condition quite like other parents. So find a community of parents. And I'm not going to say they know best or better than you, but you need a community that is walking a similar path. And that's not a mental health professional, and it's not a developmental specialist, and it's not a pediatrician. We are the professionals that are going to be coaching you on, but you need that interpersonal resource of other parents. And I think that's also very important. So that would be my advice.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you all
Okay.
for coming.
Megan, I just want to say one more thing.
Yes.
Also want to remind the parents, just hold in your heart this idea that when the world tells you what your child can't do, you say to yourself, I'm going to show you what my child will do. Because our children with a variety of disabling conditions, I have seen them soar. So I know what these kids will do, regardless of systems that try to put them in a box. So hang on to that.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Well, thank you, Barbara. Thank you, everybody, for coming. You hang on. I'm going to end the broadcast, but we'll still be in the studio. Thank you, Angelina and Kimberly, for being my modmins. I appreciate y'all.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everyone.